Stop right there and hit that subscribe button. You are about to witness a betrayal so cold, it will give you chills. Have you ever been told you're not enough? Then this story about an architect who turned her heartbreak into a billion-dollar empire is for you. Give this video a thumbs up if you believe in second chances, but only the ones you build for yourself. Part 1. The golden blood on the marble. The champagne spilled onto the white marble like golden blood. Elara Vance felt the cold, sticky liquid reach her bare feet seconds before the words truly registered. Lucienne's voice, calm and laced with the expensive scent of deceit, hung in the perfumed air of the terrace. This was the terrace overlooking the Manhattan skyline, where she had sketched 1,000 futures, and now every syllable was a silk-wrapped blade. Chloe is different. You understand, don't you, Elara? She comes from a world I need. Her family, her name, her everything. The crisp New York air, carrying salt from the distant harbor, and the stench of his betrayal, was a silent witness. Elara watched the lights of the city flicker, a cold, indifferent audience to her humiliation. She was wearing a simple, tailored silk dress that now felt like a shroud. Her hands trembled, not from the chill, but from a rage that was yet unnamed. She had spent 3 years building a home in the heart of a man who now looked at her with the cool detachment of someone returning a used item. Her name? She whispered, her voice unnaturally steady. Is that all I'm worth, Lucienne? Less than a last name? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was his response, and the expensive perfume of another woman drifting from the living room was her final verdict. That night, Elara didn't cry. She gathered her keys, her shattered pride, and a single carry-on suitcase. As the taxi pulled her away from the life she had known, one question crystallized in her mind, a question that would change everything. What is the true value of a woman who dares to rebuild herself from the ashes? Part 2. The cracks in the glass tower. 3 years earlier, Elara Vance was a woman walking the sidewalks of Lower Manhattan, with the quiet confidence of someone who had found her place. It wasn't a loud or arrogant certainty, but that silent peace that settles when dreams and reality finally speak the same language. She worked as a sustainable architecture consultant at a boutique studio in the financial district. It wasn't the highest-paying job, but it allowed her to design spaces that breathed, buildings that conversed with the city light instead of suffocating it. Lucienne Rebel, a French hedge fund manager who owned a chic art gallery in Soho, entered her life like a sudden summer storm, unannounced, but with the force of the inevitable. He wore flawlessly tailored suits that seemed a second skin and spoke 4 languages with the same captivating accent. You are unlike the women I know, he'd told her over a late-night cocktail. There's something about you that can't be bought or learned. It's authentic. Elara, who had grown up in a modest neighborhood in Queens, who had paid for her NYU degree with scholarships and graveyard shifts, who had built her career on talent and early mornings, believed those words like gospel. She moved into his Upper East Side penthouse 6 months later. The apartment boasted breathtaking views, light wooden floors that smelled of beeswax, and a kitchen where they prepared dinners that stretched till dawn, debating everything from urban planning to existentialism. Lucienne introduced her in his circles as my Elara, the architect with a poet's soul, but the cracks were small, almost invisible. Like the time Lucienne's mother visited and barely addressed 3 sentences to Elara during the entire dinner, or when he canceled his trip to Queens to meet her family, citing an unavoidable business commitment that turned out to be a private dinner with investors at a Hamptons country club. My world is complicated, darling, Lucienne would explain, stroking her hair with a tenderness that, in retrospect, seemed the automatic gesture of calming a restless pet. There are protocols, expectations. You understand, right? And Alara, because love sometimes means shrinking yourself to fit into another's dream, would always nod. What about you? Have you ever felt like you had to change who you were to be loved? Tell me in the comments below. The first real warning sign came one March night at the opening of an exhibition. A woman swept into Lucien's gallery as if the entire space had been waiting for her. She was tall, with a bearing that spoke of riding lesson and summers in the Swiss Alps. Chloe Beaumont, heiress to a Swiss banking fortune, and Lucien's ex-fiancé, a fact he quickly dismissed as a youthful mistake. But Alara had seen the way he looked at her, not with nostalgia, but with something far worse. Calculation, like someone reassessing a missed investment's market value. The following weeks were a slow erosion. Lucien started coming home late. His answers became distracted. Calls were taken on the balcony, conversations in French that ceased abruptly when she entered. Then came the night on the terrace, the spilled champagne, and the crushing words. Chloe had returned to New York. Chloe wanted to reignite things. And Lucien, the man who had promised a future, decided that the Beaumont name was worth more than 3 years of shared love. I'm sorry, Alara, truly, but this is bigger than us. Her family can open doors that you don't understand how this world works. Alara understood perfectly. She understood that she had been a diversion, a romantic interlude between the obligations of his social class. She understood that she had never been enough because her worth was measured not in what she was, but in what she could not provide. Pedigree, connections, the kind of capital that is inherited, not built. I want you out by tomorrow, he'd said with almost gentle cruelty. I've spoken to my lawyer. There's nothing to divide, of course, but I can give you 3 months' rent to find a place. It's fair. Fair. Alara felt something inside her shatter, not her heart, but the fundamental belief that love could overcome class. She packed silently, leaving behind the jewelry he had gifted her. Each piece now felt like a retrospective bribe. At 3 a.m., the taxi dropped her off at a cheap hotel in Chelsea. She sat on the edge of the bed, and finally, amidst the indifferent glow of the city lights, the tears came. But beneath the tears, something else was born. A cold fury, a directionless determination. She would never again need validation from anyone. She would be enough for herself. And that, she realized as the dawn tinted the sky, would be her most perfect revenge. Part 3. From the ashes of humiliation. New York loves secrets, but it loves gossip more. The news of the breakup spread through Lucien's world, that universe of galleries, investors, and rooftop parties, like ink in water. Alara knew it when the pity messages started rolling in. So sorry about you and Lucien. Always knew it wouldn't last. These men never marry outside their circle. At least you can go back to your normal life, right? Each message was a slap wrapped in fake empathy. The real blow landed 3 days later. Her boss, Montserrat, walked into her office with the expression people wear when they are about to ruin your day with pragmatism. The sustainable hotel project in the Hamptons, the contract she had secured after months of work, was canceled. The client, an investor in Lucien's circle, decided to go in a different direction. Montserrat explained, avoiding her gaze. You know how it is, Alara. In this business, relationships are everything. And after what happened with Rebel, the message was crystal clear. Associating with Alara now meant associating with a woman who had been publicly discarded. She was a liability. Alara walked back to her small rental studio, feeling invisible, like her humiliation had turned her into a ghost. The worst moment came 2 weeks later at a cultural center opening in Brooklyn. She saw them, Lucien and Chloe. entering together with the synchronicity of a couple accustomed to being watched. Chloe saw her first, and she smiled, not a smirk of crude triumph, but a smile of pity, the kind that says, "Poor creature, you never stood a chance." Then, with the grace of a perfect ballet move, she took Lucien's arm and guided him away. He didn't even look at Alara. She held on for 20 more minutes, playing the role of the strong woman moving on. Then, she slipped out and vomited in an alley, not from alcohol, but from pure humiliation. Back in her apartment, she opened her laptop and searched for Chloe Beaumont. The results were an avalanche of society articles, Forbes mentions, and photos at charity galas. Chloe didn't just have money. She had something more dangerous, the power of irrelevance. She was so established, she didn't need to prove anything. And Alara, with her talent and her dreams of sustainable architecture, was not a rival. She was an anecdote. That night, Alara remembered something her grandmother had told her. "The problem with hitting rock bottom, Mija, is that you only have two options. Stay there or start climbing." Alara rose, made herself a cup of strong coffee, and made a decision. She would not stay. She would not let Lucien rebel and his aristocratic blonde define her story. She opened a blank document and wrote a single phrase: Reconstruction Plan. Alara Vance 2.0. She added a list. Update professional portfolio. Seek international projects. Outside the New York circle. Learn a new skill that makes me invaluable. Never, ever depend emotionally on anyone again. Show them all they were wrong. Do you think Alara should stay in New York and fight, or leave the city behind? Let me know your strategy in the comments. Part 4. The Fracture Point and the Great Escape. The bathroom mirror broke by accident, or perhaps it was Alara's fist connecting with the glass in a moment of contained rage, a buildup of weeks of rejection. It was an April morning. She had received her 5th rejection email. "We appreciate your talent, Alara, but at this time, we are looking for profiles that better align with our current client network." Translation: "We don't want the baggage you're carrying." She read the email 3 times. On the 3rd, something simply gave way. The impact of her phone against the glass produced a crystalline, almost beautiful sound. The mirror fractured into a web of cracks, multiplying her reflection into 100 fragmented Alaras. And in that moment, surrounded by broken versions of herself, she had an epiphany. She could not rebuild in New York. This city knew her too well. She had her failure tattooed on the face of every person who had seen her on Lucien's arm. She needed to disappear, to reinvent herself where no one knew who she had been. She cleaned up the broken glass. Each shard she collected was a piece of her old life she was leaving behind. She applied that same night to an intensive 6-month specialization program in bioclimatic design and circular economy in Aarhus, Denmark. The deadline was 2 weeks away. The money, saved in an account Lucien never knew about, was now her exit ticket. The acceptance email arrived 5 days later. Accepted. Alara smiled, a small, secret smile of someone who had just found the exit door to a room she thought was locked. She resigned from her job, sold almost everything she owned, and kept only 2 suitcases of practical clothes and her work equipment. Each object left behind was one less anchor. The night before her flight, she took a final walk past Lucien's gallery. Lights were on. Through the windows, she could see elegant silhouettes and wine glasses. She paused for a moment, not out of nostalgia, but out of farewell. "Thank you," she whispered to the illuminated building. "Thank you for showing me who I never want to be again." The flight to Copenhagen left at 6 in the morning. As the plane took off and New York became a fading map of lights below, Alara closed her eyes and visualized her future self. Stronger, wiser, whole. a woman who built her own greatness. The point of no return was behind her. Now, only the path forward remained. Part 5. The Tempering in the North. Copenhagen in May is a city of perpetual light and affectionate, cutting winds. Elara arrived with 2 suitcases, an unyielding purpose, and 0 expectations beyond survival. The first few days were pure disorientation. The Danish language sounded like water running over stones. The specialization program was intensely absurd. 12-hour days of classes, projects, and site visits. Elara plunged into the work like plunging into cold water. Initial shock, followed by clarifying focus. She discovered that pain could be fuel. Every time she was tempted to check Lucien's social media, she forced herself to design a mental building. Every time nostalgia threatened to paralyze her, she studied until exhaustion became her sedative. Her professors noticed. Petra, a 60-year-old Danish architect with ice-blue eyes and a steel mind, stopped her one day. "Your work is exceptional, Elara, but there's an urgency, as if you're running from something." Elara looked her in the eye. "I am not running. I am chasing." The transformation was molecular. She started running along the harbor, needing to feel her body as something that belonged to her. She learned basic Danish. She accepted every extra project offered to her. Her nights became canvases of CAD, renders, and thermal efficiency calculations. And a strange thing happened. She began to like the woman she was becoming. Not the soft, compliant version she had been with Lucien, but something sharper, more focused. A blade that had been tempered in the fire of humiliation and emerged stronger, not bitter. In August, she was offered a paid internship at Bjarke Ingels Group, BIG, one of Scandinavia's most prestigious studios. The interview took place in a glass and wood building that seemed to breathe. "How would you design a space for grief?" a senior partner asked. Elara thought of her Chelsea studio, the broken mirror. "I would design it with transparency," she replied. "Glass walls that let in light, but maintain intimacy. Grief needs to be seen without being exposed. It needs space to expand without drowning. And it needs a clearly visible exit door, because hope is architecture as much as walls are." There was a silence. Then, the senior partner smiled. "You start in September." One October afternoon, while working on a museum design for Oslo, her phone vibrated. An Instagram notification. She opened the app for the first time in months. Her feed was frozen in the Lucien era. Out of impulse, she searched for his profile. There it was. Photos with Chloe. The wedding had been in July, a ceremony at a chateau in the Hamptons. Images of performative luxury. Lucien smiling that smile that had once made her heart race. She waited to feel something. Pain. Rage. Jealousy. Instead, she felt nothing. Or more accurately, indifference. Like looking at a photo of a place you once lived, but no longer recognize as home. She closed the app. And in that moment, with the cold light of Copenhagen streaming through her office window, Elara Vance knew she had won the most important battle. The battle against her own past. Hey! If you're rooting for Elara right now, if you feel her strength, do me a favor. Hit that like button. And if you want to see what happens when she finally returns to New York, make sure you've hit the subscribe and notifications button, because the climax is coming. Part 6. The Return and the Reckoning. 18 months after leaving New York, Elara Vance returned to the city for work. Big had won the bid to design a new cultural complex in Hudson Yards, and she was the lead project architect. The client meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday. Elara arrived with a presentation that was flawless. Sustainability data that would make any environmental committee weep with joy, and a quiet confidence that didn't need to raise its voice to be heard. The panel included city officials, businessmen, and, in an irony that couldn't have been scripted better, Lucien Rebel. His investment fund was one of the project's key financiers. Ilara saw him before he saw her. He was still handsome, but there was something diminished about him, a tension in his shoulders, wrinkles around his eyes etched by stress. When their eyes met, Lucien paled. "Ilara!" His voice was strangled. "Mr. Rabel," she acknowledged with a polite nod, treating him like any other stakeholder. "A pleasure to see you again." Her presentation was perfect. She spoke of bioclimatic design, urban integration, and financial projections that made sustainability seem not just ethical, but profitable. The panel, metaphorically, gave her a standing ovation. Lucien said nothing. He just stared at her as if she were a ghost, or worse, as if she were what he let go. After the meeting, he caught up to her in the lobby. "Ilara, wait, can we talk? Coffee?" She evaluated him. She saw the man she once loved, now appearing as a stranger, dressed in the skin of a memory. "I don't have time, Lucien. My flight leaves in 3 hours. Please, just 10 minutes. I owe you at least a conversation." She considered her options. She could walk away. But there was a small, curious part of her that wanted to hear what this man, her first great love and her first great lesson, had to say. 10 minutes. At the coffee shop across the street. "You look incredible," Lucien began, desperation in his tone. The desperation of someone realizing they made an irreversible mistake. "Thank you. I'm doing what I do." "Architecture." Lucien stirred his coffee without tasting it. "Ilara, what happened between us? The way it ended. I've thought about it a lot, and I regret it. Profoundly." "Go on." "Chloe and I didn't work. We divorced 3 months ago. It turned out that having the right last name wasn't enough when there was zero real connection, zero love." He waited for her to react. Satisfaction, compassion, something. She took a sip of her espresso. "I'm sorry to hear that. Is that all? I thought maybe, I don't know, we could talk, reconnect. You and I had something special." Ilara placed her cup down with a small, definitive clink. "We had something unbalanced. I loved you. You loved what I represented, a bohemian phase before you met your class obligations. And when those expectations called, you discarded me like clothes you no longer needed. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." Her voice held no anger, only clarity. "And you know what's the most ironic thing, Lucien? You did me a favor. You forced me to discover something I never would have learned with you, that my worth doesn't depend on being chosen. It depends on choosing myself every damn day." Lucien looked defeated. "Is there no chance?" "No." The word was soft, but absolute. "You are my past, Lucien, and I don't live there anymore." She stood up, left a $20 bill on the table, and before walking away, she allowed herself one final observation. "I hope you find what you're looking for, but it is not me. I will never be me again." Part 7. A new architecture of love and legacy. At the airport, Ilara received a text from Petra, her former professor. "Someone wants to meet you. Damien Sorensen, Danish entrepreneur, renewable energy sector, looking for a lead architect for his new sustainable city project in the south of Spain. He thinks you're perfect. Interested?" Ilara did a quick search. Damien Sorensen, 42, founder of a green technology company valued in the billions. A direct competitor of several firms Lucien Rebel had invested in. Ilara smiled. "Very interested," she texted back. "Schedule the meeting." 3 months later, Ilara was back in New York. But this time, she wasn't alone. Damien Sorensen was exactly what she didn't know she needed. a man who valued competence over pedigree. Their first meeting had been a work session that extended 7 hours. They discussed design, philosophy, and the future of architecture. "I'm not looking for a yes person," he'd warned her. "I'm looking for someone who tells me when I'm wrong. Someone with their own vision." "Then you're going to hate me," Ilara countered. "Because your initial proposal for the sustainable city is technically impressive but emotionally cold. Architecture isn't just efficiency, it's built emotion." Damien stared at her. Then he smiled. "You're hired, and we are going to design something extraordinary." The attraction between them was slow, built on mutual respect and genuine admiration. Not the romantic tornado Lucienne had been, but something solid, architectural. 6 months later, they were back in New York, presenting the Sustainable City project to investors. The event was at the Mandarin Oriental, overlooking Central Park. Ilara wore a structured dress that moved like architecture over her skin. Lucienne and Chloe were present. When Ilara and Damien walked in together, there was a moment of collective recognition. The symmetry was too perfect. Ilara spoke for 40 minutes. She showed renders of a city that breathed sustainability without sacrificing beauty. When she finished, a standing ovation. Damien kissed her temple. "You are brilliant," he whispered. "I know," she replied, smiling. Lucienne approached afterward. "Congratulations. The presentation was stunning." He looked at Damien, who was talking with investors a few feet away. "So, you and Sorensen—" "Yes, it's serious." Ilara could have rubbed her happiness, her success, everything she had built, in his face. Instead, she said something far more devastating. "It's enough, Lucienne, and that is all I need to know." She walked away toward her life, leaving Lucienne Rebel as what he had always been, a necessary lesson on her path to becoming the woman she was destined to be. Part 8. The Foundation of Self-Love. 2 years later, Ilara Vance and Damien Sorensen married in a small ceremony in Copenhagen. No French chateau, no endless guest lists, just 50 people who truly mattered. During their vows, Damien said, "I love you not for completing me, but for challenging me, for being so brilliant that you force me to be better every day." And Ilara responded, "I love you for seeing my strength and never being afraid of it, but for building with me, not on top of me." The story was never about revenge. The story was about a woman who fell so low she hit rock bottom, who decided that the bottom was only the starting point for a new construction. She learned that self-love is not selfishness, it is architecture. It requires solid foundations, a clear structure, and the courage to let light in without fear of vulnerability. Ilara designed the life she wanted, brick by brick, decision by decision. And when she looked back, she saw not failure, but metamorphosis. The silent power of a woman who refused to stay broken. There is a lie we are told, that our worth depends on being chosen by the right man, the right job, the right social circle. But the truth, the one Ilara learned through fire, is that our worth depends on choosing ourselves. Every day, every decision, every time we fall and choose to rise, not out of pride, but out of respect for ourselves. And when you finally look in the mirror, not the broken one, but the new one you installed with your own hands, you will see something extraordinary. A woman who didn't need anyone to save her, because she learned to save herself. And that, in the end, is the only rescue that is truly worthwhile. Final call to action. If Ilara's story inspired you to start your own Reconstruction Plan 2.0, comment below with the word rebuild. I read every single comment. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to hear this story of strength. Thank you for watching Part 9. The Spanish Sun and the Steel Test, the Spanish Sun and the Steel Test. 3 years into their marriage, Ilara and Damien's life was a meticulously planned structure, balanced between their Vesterbro apartment in Copenhagen and the constant global travel their business demanded. The foundation of their relationship wasn't romance, but a shared, almost fanatical devotion to the idea that architecture could genuinely change the world. Their new venture, the Horizon Project, a massive sustainable residential and tech hub planned for the coast of Andalusia, Spain, was now entering the critical phase. It was meant to be Ilara's masterpiece, the physical manifestation of everything she had learned since the collapse of her old life in New York. A city that didn't just use green tech, but was structurally symbiotic with its environment. The site, a sun-drenched expanse overlooking the Mediterranean, was ironically beautiful. It was close enough to Barcelona's elite circles to feel the proximity of her past, yet geographically distant enough to be truly hers. The challenge wasn't technical. Ilara's designs were flawless. The challenge was political and financial. "The local government wants faster returns, Ilara," Damien explained one evening over a secure video call, the urgency in his voice cutting through the 7-hour time difference. "They're being heavily lobbied by traditional construction interests. They keep citing the risk of our circular economy models." Ilara rubbed her temples. "Risk. The only risk is their outdated model. We proved in the Oslo project that low-energy design is a higher long-term return. This is about control, Damien. Someone is feeding them doubt. Who do you think is trying to sabotage Ilara's work? Is it a former competitor, or perhaps someone we've met before? Share your theory below." That someone revealed themselves subtly. It was during a major investor summit in Madrid. Ilara was mid-presentation, passionately explaining the bioclimatic strategy, when a man in the back row began to interrupt with calculated, aggressive questions designed to undermine her financial projections. Ms. Vance, the man, whose badge identified him as Sebastian Thorne, head of a powerful German private equity fund, pressed, "While your vision is inspiring, your reliance on unproven modular construction for 60% of the housing strikes us as excessively risky, especially when a reliable firm like Rabel Group Investments could provide guaranteed traditional financing and development." The air went instantly cold. Rabel Group Investments, Lucien's firm. Ilara felt a familiar, metallic taste of betrayal, but this time it wasn't personal. It was strictly business. Lucien was not there, but his influence, his name, his network, was the ghost attempting to derail her life's work. Ilara didn't skip a beat. She set down her presentation clicker, locked eyes with Thorne, and smiled. Not with warmth, but with the cool precision of a newly sharpened tool. "Mr. Thorne, thank you for bringing up tradition. We respect tradition, which is why we value transparency. My designs are not unproven. They are the most awarded methodologies in Scandinavia right now. As for guaranteed financing, if you examine the fine print of the Rabel Group's proposal, which I have, you'll find they are demanding exclusive rights to the energy grid we are building, effectively turning a community asset into a private profit center. Our model keeps the grid municipal. The risk, sir, is not in sustainable design. It is in old-world thinking that disguises control as stability." The investors around Thorne shifted uncomfortably. Ilara's delivery wasn't emotional. It was clinical, hitting him with data points that dismantled his attack. She had learned to speak the language of power better than Lucien ever had. The following weeks were a brutal escalation. The Rabel Group, operating through proxies and shell companies, began a targeted campaign. They inflated the cost of local land acquisition, published doubt-sowing op-eds in Spanish financial papers, and even attempted to lure away her lead structural engineer with an exorbitant offer. He's not just competing, Alara, Damien warned her after analyzing the latest financial maneuvering. He's trying to bury the Horizon project. He sees this as a zero-sum game. Then we will show him that a clean fight is a profitable one, Alara stated, her voice hardening. Call in the favor with the Swedish pension fund. We need an injection of capital that makes us too big to fail, and we need it before the next council vote. Subscribe to stay tuned. The stakes are too high for Alara to lose this fight. If you're ready for the showdown, leave A in the comments. The council vote was set for the following Monday. It was a make-or-break moment. Without the local council's full approval, the project could be delayed for years, bleeding capital and credibility. Alara and Damien knew they were facing a well-funded, calculated attack, driven by old grudges and even older greed. On the night before the vote, Alara couldn't sleep. She sat on her apartment balcony in Marbella, watching the lights of the distant fishing boats. She was no longer the fragile woman who had wept in a Chelsea studio. She was a CEO, an architect, a force. But the lingering scent of past humiliation still whispered, what if they were right? What if your dreams are too big for this world? She pulled out her laptop and opened the initial sketch of the Horizon project. The building wasn't just concrete and steel, it was her defiance, her reconstructed self. A soft knock came at the door. Damien stood there, holding 2 glasses of Spanish red wine. Can't sleep? He asked, his gray eyes reading her perfectly. He's in my head, Damien. Lucien. Not the man, but the principle, the entitlement, the feeling that pedigree always wins over purpose. Damien handed her a glass. Alara, look at me. He took her hands, his grip firm and grounding. Lucien Rebel measures success by how much he can take. We measure it by how much we can build. He is a ghost from a past you transcended. Tomorrow, you don't fight him. You fight for the future you promised to yourself. You are not his anecdote. You are his legacy of regret. She smiled, a genuine, deep smile that reached her eyes. You're right. And if we lose the vote? We don't lose, Alara said, taking a sip of the wine, the taste rich and complex. We rebuild the strategy, but we start with a win. Part 10. The vote and the counter-strike. The vote and the counter-strike. The Andalusian Council chamber was a small theater of tension. It was Monday morning, and the final vote on the Horizon project's zoning and infrastructure investment was about to begin. The room was packed with local business owners, environmental activists, and a phalanx of silent, well-dressed observers, the proxies for the big financial players. Alara and Damien sat side by side. Alara was impeccably dressed, her posture radiating controlled calm. Damien, beside her, looked relaxed, but Alara could feel the tension in his knee occasionally tapping against hers, a private signal that the financial battlefield was hotter than they let on. She knew the odds. Sebastian Thorne and the Rabel Group's pressure campaign had been effective, swaying several key swing votes with promises of safer traditional investment and veiled threats of moving large capital elsewhere. The council members, old and rooted in local politics, looked nervous. They valued the visibility of a project like Horizon, but they feared the instability threatened by the powerful, unseen forces of European finance. The mayor, a gray-haired woman named Carmen, called the meeting to order. The debate lasted 2 agonizing hours. Alara spoke one last time, abandoning the technical slides for pure persuasion. You have seen the numbers, she stated, her voice clear and strong in the small room. But this is not about numbers. It is about legacy. Are you willing to mortgage your grandchildren's environment for a temporary boost in your budget? The Rabel Group's proposal offers speed. We offer future-proofing. When the world asks where Spain chose to lead, Let the answer be here, at the Horizon Project. She ended on a firm note and sat down when, then, Sebastian Thorne, Lucien's chief proxy, stood up. His intervention was sharp, designed to sow final, critical doubt. Madam Mayor, esteemed counsel, Thorne began, his tone dripping with faux respect. Ms. Vance's vision is poetic, but poetry does not pay infrastructure bills. The truth is, Mr. Rabel's partners have presented an alternative financing package that is $50 million less risky for the city. We have a guaranteed commitment from a major Swiss bank. With all due respect, Ms. Vance's Big Sorensen team is talented, but they are relatively new to the specifics of the Andalusian market. We cannot risk a groundbreaking project on their learning curve. He looked directly at Alara, a fleeting, triumphant smirk crossing his face. The mayor prepared to call the vote. The tension was suffocating. Alara's hand instinctively reached for Damien's. Suddenly, Damien Sorensen, who had remained silent throughout the public debate, stood up. He didn't ask permission. His presence, tall and commanding, immediately drew every eye. With all due respect, Mr. Thorne, Damien's voice, a deep resonance that carried the weight of billions, cut through the room. I must correct you on one critical detail regarding your guaranteed financing. Thorne frowned, visibly annoyed. Mr. Sorensen, this is a local council vote, not a private discussion. It becomes a relevant discussion, Damien countered coolly. When the stability of the financing you propose is, shall we say, suddenly compromised. He then pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. He spoke, not to the council, but to Thorne. The Swiss bank commitment you cited, Mr. Thorne? I'm afraid my firm, Sorensen Green Tech, just initiated a hostile bid for their distressed renewable assets in Scandinavia, triggering an automatic regulatory freeze on all their new commitments in the EU. Your guaranteed financing, as of 3 minutes ago, is non-existent. The council chamber erupted into murmurs. Thorne turned beet red, pulling out his own phone, which immediately started vibrating furiously. This is outrageous interference! Rabel will sue! Thorne stammered, his polished facade cracking. Damien remained unflappable. Mr. Thorne, this is not interference. This is market strategy. My business is built on foresight and aggressive asset control, something Mr. Rabel taught me to respect years ago when we competed for assets in the North Sea. He plays the game, I play it faster. He turned to the mayor and the council. The alternative financing is gone, but my firm, as a gesture of confidence, is prepared to underwrite the full infrastructure bond, plus a $50 million contingency fund against any delays. This is clean money, Madam Mayor, with a proven track record. The choice is no longer between safe and risky. It is between a guarantee of success from us or a guarantee of endless litigation from the Rabel Group. The impact was immediate and devastating to Thorne's position. He had lost his leverage and, more importantly, his credibility. Mayor Carmen, a seasoned politician, wasted no time. She banged her gavel. The alternative proposal is withdrawn due to sudden material changes in financing. Council, we vote on the Horizon Project proposal, as presented by Ms. Vance. The vote was a landslide. 7 votes in favor, 2 abstentions. Alara felt the tension drain from her body. The victory was immense. It wasn't just about the project. It was about the validation that power, real power, comes from building, not breaking. Later that day, as the news broke across European business wires, Alara and Damien stood on the balcony of their temporary apartment in Marbella, watching the Spanish sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson. You didn't tell me you were going to corner a Swiss bank? Alara whispered, half shocked, half admiring. It was a last-minute tactical play. I learned a long time ago that in a fight against Lucien Rebel, you don't fight his pawns, you target his queen, Damien said, wrapping his arms around her. Besides, I knew the real asset was you. I just had to clear the field. Elara leaned into him. She knew that Damien's act was the ultimate demonstration of his faith in her. Not the fleeting romantic love Lucienne had offered, but the deep, shared commitment to standing shoulder to shoulder against the world. Her phone chimed. It was an email from an unknown address, but the content was unmistakable. A single line from Lucienne Rebel, sent perhaps from a distant boardroom, now witnessing his own defeat. Congratulations, Elara. You built quite the fortress. Elara didn't reply. She didn't have to. She deleted the email. Lucienne was no longer a ghost in her head. He was a footnote in her increasingly impressive biography. The real structure she had built was not in Andalusia, but within herself. Final call to action. What do you think of Damien's counterstrike? Was it genius or too ruthless? Drop your opinion in the comments. And if you want to know what happens when Elara runs into Chloe, Lucienne's ex-wife, at a global summit, be sure to hit the notification bell. Part 11. Ghosts in the Global Arena host in the Global Arena. The Horizon project in Andalusia was now well underway. A triumph of sustainable engineering and resilient vision. Elara and Damien's joint venture, Sorensen Vance Architecture, SVA, was fast becoming a global leader in green urban development. Their reputation, built on integrity and groundbreaking design, allowed them to choose their battles, and more importantly, choose their partners. 6 months after the pivotal vote in Spain, Elara was attending the World Urban Forum in Geneva, a high-profile summit bringing together architects, urban planners, and global investors. SVA was presenting their next major initiative, a plan to redevelop neglected port areas into vibrant, climate-resilient communities. Elara was in her element, moving through the bustling conference hall with an ease that bespoke true mastery of her field. She was giving an impromptu interview to a panel of journalists when her gaze drifted across the room and landed on a familiar face. Chloe Beaumont. She was across the crowded hall, surrounded by what looked like a media scrum, her elegant blonde hair pulled back in a sophisticated chignon. Chloe, once the epitome of Lucienne's preferred social circle, now had a different aura. There was a quiet intensity about her, a focus that Elara hadn't seen during their brief, devastating encounter years ago. Elara felt a flicker of something, not resentment, but a strange, distant curiosity. The woman who had, through no fault of her own, been the catalyst for Elara's greatest pain, was now simply another powerful woman in the global arena. As her interview wrapped up, Elara made her way towards the coffee station, strategically placing herself to observe. Chloe was now talking to a group of female tech entrepreneurs, her gestures animated, her voice clear and authoritative, even from a distance. What do you think Elara should do? Avoid Chloe or approach her? And if she approaches, what should she say? Share your thoughts below. Suddenly, Chloe turned, her eyes scanning the room, and she saw Elara. For a split second, a flash of recognition, and perhaps surprise, crossed Chloe's face. Then, to Elara's astonishment, Chloe gave a small, polite nod, almost an acknowledgement, before turning back to her conversation. Elara, now armed with the confidence that had been forged in fire, decided against avoidance. The past was past, but an opportunity for a different kind of closure, perhaps, presented itself. She calmly walked towards Chloe's group. As Elara approached, Chloe excused herself from her conversation, a slight smile playing on her lips. Elara Vance, isn't it? Chloe said, extending a hand. Her grip was firm, professional. It's been a long time. Chloe Beaumont. Indeed, Elara replied, matching her tone. It's good to see you. Thriving. Chloe chuckled, a soft, self-deprecating sound. Thriving is a generous word. Rebuilding, I'd say. Much like yourself, I imagine. Ilara raised an eyebrow. Rebuilding? Yes. Chloe gestured towards a nearby, quieter corner of the hall. Could we, for a moment? They moved away from the main crowd, the ambient hum of the forum acting as a backdrop to their unexpected conversation. I started my own impact investment fund, Chloe explained, her gaze direct, focusing on sustainable urban tech. My family's name opened doors, yes, but it took a disastrous marriage to realize that having the right name doesn't mean you're actually building anything of substance. Ilara listened, a knot in her stomach slowly loosening. This wasn't the triumphant, pitying Chloe from all those years ago. This was a woman who sounded, surprisingly, vulnerable and earnest. Lucienne and I, we were a partnership of convenience for our families, Chloe continued, her voice tinged with a weariness Ilara understood. We both knew it, but neither of us had the courage to admit it until the whole messy divorce became unavoidable. He wanted pedigree. I wanted a platform. We thought we could get both. She paused, taking a breath. I saw the news about your Horizon project. It's truly impressive, Ilara. And I saw how Lucian tried to sabotage it. He tries, Ilara corrected quietly. He doesn't succeed. No, he doesn't, Chloe conceded. He underestimated you. We all did, in his circle. I suppose I was as blinded by the right name as he was. She looked at Ilara, her gray eyes holding a genuine, unsettling honesty. I never apologized for what happened. Not directly. I regret my part in it, even if it was passive. You deserved better, and I wish I had seen then what I see now. That true value is built, not inherited. Ilara was stunned. She had prepared herself for polite disdain, for subtle superiority, for anything but this raw, unexpected candor. She searched Chloe's face for any trace of artifice, but found none. It was a sincere apology. Years in the making. A small, quiet peace settled over Ilara. The ghost of Chloe Beaumont, the woman she had once resented as a symbol of everything she wasn't, dissolved. In her place was another woman, navigating her own path of reconstruction. Thank you, Chloe, Ilara said, her voice softer than she intended. That means a lot. It should, Chloe replied, a faint smile returning. Because it's true. Listen, I'm actually looking for partners on a new initiative, repurposing abandoned industrial zones in Eastern Europe for green housing. It's ambitious, and it needs architects who understand both sustainability and social impact. I've been following SVA's work. Would you consider a conversation? Ilara looked at Chloe, a woman who once represented the very forces that tried to break her. And now, she was offering a hand. Not in competition, but in collaboration, on terms of mutual respect and shared vision. The irony was almost poetic. I would consider it, Ilara said, a strategic gleam entering her eyes. My schedule is tight, but if you send over the brief, Damien and I will take a look. We're always open to genuinely impactful projects. Chloe's smile broadened. Genuine, and won't so excellent. I'll be in touch. As Chloe walked back to her group, a lightness settled in Ilara's chest. It wasn't just the potential for a new business venture. It was the profound realization that her journey of self-reconstruction had not only rebuilt her, but had also, unexpectedly, transformed the very landscape of her past. She had not sought revenge, but she had achieved something far more powerful: redemption and respect, even from those who had once represented her greatest pain. What do you think of this unexpected alliance? Could Ilara and Chloe become powerful allies? Let me know your predictions in the comments. And if you want to see what happens when Lucian Rebel hears about this, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on. Part 12. Lucien's echoes of regret. Lucien Rebel had always prided himself on controlling the narrative. He was a master puppeteer, moving assets, reputations, and people to serve his meticulously crafted life plan. But in the 3 years since Alara Vance had walked out of his penthouse, his control had fractured. His marriage to Chloe Beaumont had dissolved into a bitter, expensive settlement, leaving him with an emotional void and a slight but noticeable dip in his public standing. His attempts to sabotage the Horizon project had not only failed, but had resulted in his firm, Rebel Group, being publicly sidelined by the Sorensen-Vance architecture powerhouse. A stinging defeat delivered by Damien Sorensen's brutal financial counterstrike. Lucien was in his London office, staring out at the perpetually gray sky, when the alert hit his private terminal. It was a market intelligence report, flagged high priority by his analysis team. The headline was stark. Chloe Beaumont's Impact Fund in talks with SVA on Eastern European Green Port Initiative. Lucien felt a punch of disbelief, followed by a surge of pure agonizing fury. He read the details twice. Alara Vance, Chloe Beaumont, working together. The two women who had, in different ways, been the keys to the world he craved, were now aligning their formidable intellect and capital, creating a force exponentially more powerful than he could contain. The irony was a bitter, metallic taste in his mouth. He snatched up his phone and immediately dialed Sebastian Thorne, his head of European operations, the very man Alara had humiliated in the Andalusian council chamber. "Thorne, what the hell is this market intel?" Lucien's voice was low, dangerous. Thorne, clearly used to Lucien's rages, responded carefully. "It's accurate, sir. Our contacts confirmed that Ms. Vance and Ms. Beaumont had a prolonged, apparently cordial discussion at the Geneva Forum. Beaumont's new fund is capital-heavy and needs SVA's architectural credibility for ESG alignment. It's a perfect strategic match, regardless of past history." "Past history is everything, Thorne. Chloe wouldn't partner with her. I told Chloe everything. I painted Vance as an ambitious provincial opportunist." Thorne sighed, the sound barely audible. "Sir, with respect, the market doesn't care about the history you painted. It cares about SVA's performance on Horizon. Ms. Beaumont is making a cold, calculated, and frankly brilliant move. This partnership will give her fund access to projects previously unattainable." Lucien slammed his fist on the desk. He hadn't just lost Alara. He had handed her the ultimate power by pushing her toward the success that now commanded even his ex-wife's respect. He had created the very monster that was now eclipsing him. Later that evening, fueled by expensive scotch and simmering regret, Lucien did something he hadn't done in years. He typed Alara Vance's name into a messaging app that was entirely encrypted, a channel he'd once used only for the most delicate business deals. He didn't want business support. He wanted to know. "LR. I saw the news. Chloe, you're taking on Eastern Europe." He waited, heart pounding, for an agonizing 45 minutes. Just as he was about to delete the message and pretend the lapse in control never happened, he received a reply. It wasn't verbose. It wasn't emotional. It was a single, devastating sentence. "EV, I am. It's a compelling project. I'm glad you finally appreciate the value of true vision, Lucien. You should have focused less on last names." The use of his name, Lucien, felt clinical, dissecting him. It was a confirmation that she was completely untouched by his existence. He wasn't even a worthy rival anymore. He was a cautionary tale. He wrote a reply, something about missing her, about how their love was real beneath the superficiality. But his finger hovered over the delete button. He knew the words were hollow. He knew she wouldn't believe him. Most painfully, He knew he didn't even believe himself anymore. The irony of his life now was crushing. He was the man with the powerful name, the vast wealth, yet he was utterly alone, watching the two most important women in his life, the one he loved and the one he needed, build a future together, completely without him. Lucien Rebel had always sought to be the center of the universe. Now, he was watching a magnificent new solar system form, and he was nothing more than cold, discarded debris, orbiting too far away to matter. The true cost of his youthful arrogance wasn't the loss of a woman, but the loss of his own relevancy. He slowly deleted the unsent message. There was nothing left to say. Final thoughts. The unspoken epilogue. The epilogue, Ilara knew, wasn't written in grand public announcements, but in the quiet, decisive actions of her daily life. She didn't seek to destroy Lucien. She sought to outbuild him, and in doing so, she rendered him irrelevant. She was now standing on the site of the Horizon Project, watching the first prefabricated, low-carbon residential units being lifted into place, a tangible structure of her defiance. Damien was beside her, discussing logistics. "We have the initial meeting with Chloe's team next week in Berlin," Damien said, looking down at her. "She's impressive, Ilara. She's learned the game." "She has," Ilara agreed, slipping her hand into his. "We all learn, don't we? Some of us, unfortunately, have to learn the hardest lessons." She looked out at the construction site, then up at the clear Andalusian sky. Her life was no longer defined by the cold marble of a New York penthouse or the anxiety of class difference. It was defined by light, by connection, and by the undeniable truth that she was a woman who had saved herself, and in doing so, had built a legacy that would stand long after the echoes of one man's regret had faded away. Final call. That's the end of Lucien's chapter. If this story of resilience and self-worth resonated with you, let me know your favorite part in the comments. And don't forget to share the ultimate story of the architect's vengeance.